Here we are, the peak of difficulty in GTFO. You've gone through multiple rundowns, many different expeditions filled with countless objectives for the Warden. Throughout these levels, you've learned much about the dangers that wait for you around every corner of the complex. And bit by bit, you've proven yourself capable of handling whatever task it is that's been put into your objective stack. But before you can celebrate the completion of yet another rundown, you're going to have to survive what could be considered the hardest level GTFO has released to date. So, let's get into it. Hello everyone, Professor Scaly here, and welcome to the alternate R4E1 level guide. As always, we will be starting off with your loadout. However, there's a little bit more to discuss this time around, so I'm going to try to keep things a bit concise. That way I'm informative, but not taking too terribly long. So starting off, when it comes to your tools, I recommend you bring with you a bio tracker, a mine deployer, and 2 burst sentries. And the reason for these tools is pretty simplistic. When it comes to the bio tracker, there's going to be a lot of fog in this level that's going to be hindering your sight, and there's also going to be a fair amount of shadow type enemies, so you're going to want a bio tracker to more easily deal with all of that. When it comes to the mine deployer person, you are going to be mining doors during some of the alarm sequences, so you and the team can conserve a fair amount of ammunition, which is incredibly important early on. And if we're going for the secondary objective, you're definitely going to be placing down a lot of mines to ensure that you don't meet an untimely demise. And last but not least, when it comes to the sentries, these are to give us some extra firepower during some of the alarms, just once again to help conserve some of our ammunition for some other moments. And if we are going for the secondary objective, we have to deal with a reactor startup sequence. And as many of you are probably already aware, when it comes to reactors, sentries are absolutely going to be your best friend. Now, when it comes to these tools, if you're going for a secondary run, you're going to want to be cautious on exactly which one you take. When it comes to that reactor, it's not your typical all 4 people defend together until all the enemies are dead, then they go and get the code, come back, and then rinse and repeat until it's finished. Instead, you're going to be splitting up quite a bit, and everybody on the team is going to have their own separate job, and that job is really going to just be dictated by which tool you brought in with you. So if you're bringing the bio tracker, you're going to be defending pretty much the entire time. Because once we get about halfway through the reactor, there will be shadow type enemies during these reactor waves, so you are needed there. That way you can tag the enemies for your teammates as well as for the sentries. When it comes to the mine deployer person, you primarily are going to be focusing on getting the codes pretty much by yourself, which means you're going to have to go into zone after zone filled with many different type of enemies: strikers, shooters, giant strikers, even some shadows, shadow giants, and shadow scouts. So you're going to want a tool that can help you back there. And some people like to default to a bio tracker since there are shadow type enemies. But now that there are thermal scope weapons in the game, I much rather bring a mine deployer with me so I can deal with the blood door more easily and also just simply pull some rooms from time to time and let mines do most of the work. And then I could just rely on a PDW as my primary weapon for those shadow type enemies, and then a secondary weapon like the Hell Gun, Hell Rifle, Choke Mod Shotgun, or maybe the Burst Cannon, so I can more easily deal with giant enemies by myself, or maybe even kill some scouts from a distance without waking up everything that's in the room with the scout. This is a very stressful job though, so if you are going to take the mine deployer, make sure you are up for it. And then when it comes to the 2 sentries, one of them is going to be primarily defending along with the bio tracker person, and the other one is going to be sort of a rotator. They are going to be helping out the defenders by either shooting along with them or by going further into the reactor and grabbing resources and bringing them back, as the defenders can't really leave whenever they want, or that rotator person is actually going to be helping out the mine deployer from time to time, either clearing out rooms, or if that mine deployer person does happen to die, they are going to be the one who's in charge of watching the defenders back and killing every single one of the enemies before they get to them, and then going all the way into the back end of the reactor and picking up that person and getting them back on their feet. So depending on what job you want to take, if you're going for a secondary run, because of course all that information only applies to the people going for secondary, take in consideration what I just said before deciding which tool you want to bring with you. You want to be a defender, take that bio tracker or take a sentry. Do not take the mine deployer, otherwise you are screwing your team over. Dropping down into level, you'll see that your main objective is to lift the lockdown by taking the 2 power cells given to you right off the get-go and plugging them into the generators, which will always be located inside zone 458. Meanwhile, you and your teammates in those power cells will be starting off inside zone 455. Now, while the lockdown is active, there are 2 modifiers affecting the level. The first one is the dense layer of fog above you is slowly descending. And while this isn't too big of an issue, more so an annoyance, it also means you want to still move fairly quickly so you aren't completely enveloped by fog when you get to some of the later points. The second modifier though, which is a whole lot more threatening, is the error alarm that's currently active. This error alarm will spawn in one tank every 4 minutes, and the first one will spawn in, I believe, about 15 seconds after your feet hit the floor. Now, this is problematic because not only will that tank drain your resources, as he has a fair amount of HP, so you're going to have to shoot him a whole lot, but it can also be a huge problem if you're in the middle of an alarm door and he spawns in, especially because 2 of the alarm doors you have to deal with on the way to the generators are Class 1 sustain alarms, which take about 1 minute and 40 seconds to complete. Thankfully, though, there is a counter to this. All you have to do is hit the O key on your keyboard and see what the timer says at the top left of your screen, because if you're about to do an alarm door and you see that it's about to hit the 4 minute and 15 second mark, or 8 minutes and 15 seconds, or anything that's a multiple 4 minutes, you know a tank is about to spawn in, and therefore you won't have the time to deal with it. And the other thing along the way is you want to make sure you're grabbing all the resources. Some people like to rush this beginning part as fast as they possibly can, but there's really no harm in taking time to grab resources, as I believe every single zone along the way has at least 4 uses of ammunition. So while you're going through here, keep an eye out for boxes and lockers for those resources, or keep an eye out for the terminal so you can just simply ping where everything is and then grab everything and resupply. And if you have time to deal with the next alarm before the next tank spawns in, deal with the alarm and then keep pushing forward. But starting off inside zone 455, there will be strikers, shooters, as well as some hybrids in the zone. You're going to be making your way to the far eastern side of the zone. There you'll be able to find the security door to zone 456. You'll have to deal with that first tank before you deal with the alarm, which there are multiple different locations you could fight him in. I like fighting him in the room that my team is currently in the background footage, as there's plenty of room to spread out. And once he and everything else nearby is dead, I'll then go to the northern room real quick to use the terminal in there to ping where the resources are, while my teammates just take the power cells over into the eastern room where that security door is. Once we've gotten all the resources and we're good to go, we set up for the alarm door and get to work on the Class 3 sustain alarm. And as you can see with the map overlay, there are 2 different locations enemies could spawn from, and I recommend that all 5 of the doors I've labeled you shut, but the only ones you want to mine would be these 3 doors here. Reason for it is because these are bigger doors, so there's more surface area for the enemies to pile up on, which means more enemies die to the mine. It's even more efficient, while the 2 northern doors are just simply small doors, so mining them isn't really going to kill off a whole lot of enemies. As for your sentries, you could just simply hold on to them. You do not need to place them for this alarm. The mines will do a lot of good work in conserving our ammunition. So once we're good, activate the alarm, and once the scans are finished, 2 people can pick up the power cells and head into the next zone, while the other 2 people just deal with any of the enemies that are still left alive out here, then grab the mines and follow up with them. When it comes to zone 456, it's basically the same thing as 455. The terminal is in the second room, sort of towards the northwest corner of it, where the catwalks are, so head over there to ping where your resources are at, and your security door to 457 will be found at the far eastern side of the zone. There's also a security door up north to 459, but we can't go in here until after we've lifted the lockdown. Once you and your team are ready to go for the alarm, see if you have enough time to deal with it before the next tank spawns in. Again, this alarm takes about 1 minute and 40 seconds. And as you can see with this map overlay, there are a few different locations enemies could possibly spawn from, but the only real doors of importance that you need to make sure are set up properly would be these 2 doors down here. This one particularly, you want to make sure it's shut and mined, and then this door that leads directly into your room, leave this open as it is a small door, so shutting it and mining it isn't really going to do any good work whatsoever. So we just leave it open and place one of our sentries facing towards the door, and we should be good. As for the alarm, it is a Class 1 sustain alarm, so it'll take you a little while to finish it, but once the scan is done, you can do with any of the enemies that are still left alive, pack up your sentry, and then you and your teammates can head into zone 457. And in there, again, it's pretty much the exact same thing. More enemies, more resources. There is a 3-use disinfect pack in this zone somewhere, which you don't have to grab right now, but it's important to note because it's the only source of disinfectant in the entirety of the level, so use it wisely. There's also your bulkhead door control and door to the rest of your main objective, but we don't have to worry about this until after the lockdown, so we're just going to make our way throughout the zone. Multiple different good rooms to fight the tank in, which because of how big this zone is, you probably will have to fight 2 of them in here at least before you do the alarm, but it's no big deal. As long as you're grabbing the resources, you should be fine. As for the next security door, zone 458 can be found to the far eastern side of this area, and that security door is going to have a Class 1 sustain surge alarm tied to it. That was a little bit of a mouthful. So you're going to want to make sure you grab all the resources as you need to heal up a bit, you need to make sure you have ammunition, and you need to make sure your sentries are looking good so you have a good chance of survival when it comes to the surge alarm. And again, because it's a Class 1 sustain alarm, it will take about 1 minute 40 to complete, so make sure you have enough time to actually finish the scan before the next tank shows up. As for the alarm itself, as you can see with this map overlay, there's only one room enemies could possibly spawn from, and there are 3 different doors they could go through to get out of that room, so make sure all 3 of them are shut, but do not mine them. The only door you're going to want to actually mine would be this door right here that leads directly into your room. And then when it comes to your sentries, you could just hold on to them. I typically will wait to see where the scan is, and if it's somewhere near the security door like it typically is, I'll have one of them directly in front of me facing towards the southern end of the room, and the other sentry I will place up above on the southern part on that elevated area facing towards the west, as that's where pretty much everything will come from. If the scan goes down to the bottom of the room though, you're going to just take the sentries with you and place one to the right of you and one to the left, or both of them to the right. It depends on exactly where you're positioned in that room, as enemies could take a few different routes to get to you and your teammates. But once you are good to go, activate the alarm, get to work on the scan. Once the scan is finished, make sure you deal with every single one of the enemies that are still left over, as there will be a fair amount of them since it is a surge alarm. And once everything is dead, 2 people are going to pick up the power cells and head into 458, while the other 2 people are going to stay out here and make sure the tank that spawns in, as you will more than likely get another tank, does not rush into 458 and wake up that room. Because inside zone 458, there will be 3 sleeping giant chargers, which if you have the ammunition, you could actually just blast your way through them, but if you don't, then you're just going to want to simply sneak right by them. There are some resources in this room, which if you have enough time to, I would recommend look around and grab them before you plug the power cells into the generators, because once you plug both of them in, it will lift the lockdown, so there will no longer be a tank air alarm going on, but the fog is going to change. It's going to descend a fair amount, but the fog is then going to turn infectious. And almost the entirety of this room will be covered by that infectious fog, and since you only have a single 3-use disinfect pack in the level, you do not want a ton of people gaining a lot of infection. So what I will do sort of depends on exactly how much time I have, but I like to look around and grab resources, and then I'll plug one of the 2 power cells into a generator and then get out of the room, and then the 4th person on the team will be standing by the next generator, and once we're good to go, they will plug it in and get out as quickly as they can to minimize how much infection they have. Once you get both of the power cells in though, and you have dealt with the tank that is still alive, assuming there is one that's still actively alive, you and your teammates could take things a bit slower. There's nothing really forcing you to move quickly anymore, so you could go back through any of the zones you just went through and grab any of the resources you left behind. Although another little quick thing to note is that one of the areas inside zone 457, that little corridor area you had to go through earlier, that's going to be completely covered by infectious fog, and if you try to run through it, you are going to gain around 20 or 25% infection, which is a little bit annoying because every single one of you on the team will have to go through there. If nobody on the team has any infection, you could just simply run right through it and just tank it and then just fully disinfect 3 people, and 1 person is slightly handicapped for the rest of the level. Or you could play sort of the safe, steady route where you'll have 1 person who just goes back and tanks all the infection, and then they are going to be heading back into zone 456 and going to the northern end to the security door to 459, which is now unlocked, and they're going to sneak their way through that zone looking for a fog turbine. In there, you'll be able to find that somewhere. Usually it's towards the back end of the zone, so try your best to not wake up too many enemies along the way, and once you get the fog turbine, you can backtrack to your teammates and pick them up and take them through the infectious fog more safely, and then you can look around to grab all the resources that you missed earlier, and then once you got to everything, you can head into 459 together as a team and just deal with all the enemies in there and grab your resources, as there will be a fair amount in there. There will also be potentially some seafoam grenades or even some stacks of fog repellers, which would be amazing to get if you find them. If you find a stack, make sure the mine deploy person, by the way, is the one who picks them up, as they will need those for secondary, and then also look around for your first bulkhead key. Once you've gotten all the resources in all the zones you got through and that first bulkhead key, you're then going to head to one of the 2 door controls, depending on which objective you're going to be doing, and continue on with the rest of the level. Those of you who are going for a main objective only run, you could jump to the time that you see on screen. There we will talk about zone 460 and how to get all the way to extraction. But everybody else, we're going to be going to the beginning of the level, plugging it into our secondary bulkhead door control, and then heading up into the northern room, where we'll find the security door to zone 510. Upon entering into zone 510, a temporary blackout is going to occur, and you'll see that your secondary objective is to find the reactor and make sure it's fully up and operational before you leave. And that reactor terminal will always be located inside zone 511. Now, when it comes to zone 510 itself, there will be plenty of resources in here, although I recommend you do not touch any of these quite yet, and there's going to be a total of 4 shadow scouts. And when it comes to these scouts, as well as every other scout in the level, they will spawn in shadow type enemies if you wake them up. Once you have taken care of business in here though, you could go to the north and into the security door to zone 511. This is just an open security door, no scan or anything tied to it. And inside that room, in the middle of it, you'll be able to find the reactor terminal, as well as a few resources along the edges of the room, and even some seafoam products like grenades and trip mines, which if you find them, you could pick up the seafoam grenades right now, but I highly recommend that if you find 1 or even 2 seafoam trip mines, leave them be for the time being. because these will help out tremendously for the ending of the level, so we don't want to use them before that point. You'll also be able to find a security door to the north to zone 512 in here, as well as a security door to the west down below in the infectious fog to zone 517. Although the northern door is currently under lockdown, and that western door requires you to plug a power cell into the generator on the eastern side of the room in order to open it up. Once you know where all your resource packs are, before you activate the reactor, you're going to want to move things around a bit, as the defenders are going to be holding out inside zone 510. So you're going to want to move all of your high-use ammo packs and tool refills out there, and then the med kits you could just simply heal up with right away, and then any 2-use or 3-use packs you could just resupply with if you have room to chug them down, and if not, you could just shuffle them back into the reactor room itself, so all of the high-use resource packs are close to you, and all the low-use ones are a bit further away. And once you got everything set up how you want to, you can then go to the reactor terminal, put the startup command into it, do the full team scan, and initiate the reactor sequence itself. Now, this reactor will have a total of 6 unique waves you're going to have to deal with, but because of how it's designed, you will have to redo each wave multiple times over and over and over and over again. But that's perfectly fine. You're given a lot of ammunition, so you can hold out for a pretty lengthy duration. As I said though, your defenders will be holding out inside zone 510, sort of like you can see my teammates doing in the background footage. And when it comes to the waves, waves 1 through 3 will consist of only regular strikers and shooters. Wave 4 through 5 will spice it up a little bit by adding in some shadow strikers to the mix, but wave 6 is going to be the spiciest one of them all, as you're going to have to deal with all those type of enemies, including 2 hybrids per wave. And those hybrids are the most dangerous things, because if you don't deal with them quickly, they can very quickly throw everything into absolute chaos. So once you get to wave 6, you're going to want to make sure that once those hybrids show up, you kill them as quickly as you can. As for your sentries, I would recommend that for the first few waves you don't actually use them. You're given way more ammunition than tool refill during this reactor, so I don't really like using my sentries until I get to probably the 4th wave when the shadows start showing up. I know in the background footage I'm using them pretty much right off the get-go, but I learned later on that was a mistake, as we didn't really have any tool refill for the 5th or the 6th wave once we got around to them. And that's really all there is to when it comes to defending. You're just going to be holding out here, using any resource packs nearby, or if you have time in between waves, you could run back and grab something that's a little bit further away from you. As for the person who's gained the codes, there's a whole lot more to talk about. So let's make sure we go through this next part a bit more thoroughly. So, mind deployer person, your very first code will be given to you for free at the end of the first wave. So once you see it, you can just put that into the terminal, and that will unlock the security door to zone 512. And inside zone 512 is just going to be one long rectangular room, and this room will usually have a few regular strikers and shooters and some shadow strikers in it, as well as 2 shadow scouts, which you can either deal with this all by yourself, or if you want some assistance, one of your defenders, maybe the biotracker person or the rotator, could come on over and help you out real quick. Once you dealt with all the enemies in this room though, you can look around for those resource packs. If you find some 2-use packs, feel free to use them, but I recommend any 4 or 5-use packs just simply leave be, as the rotator could really easily come into here and use these resource packs to help the defenders out and give them even more resources and give you more time to look for those codes. As for your next code, there will be a terminal in here down below on the right side about halfway through. That terminal will always have your second reactor code on it, so whenever you've got the time to, hop onto it and figure out what it is and relay that to your teammates. Then the rotator person can put it in whenever they have time to, and you can continue moving up to the north. Up there, you'll find a security door to zone 513, which will always be unlocked, so you can open up whenever you want. And inside zone 513, you're going to want to be careful, because that zone is just one big room, and in here there will be resources you could collect or just simply leave behind for the rotator if they're near the entrance to the room, and there will be a total of 4 sleeping birthers. This zone is basically meant to prevent you and your teammates from just simply 4-man rushing the codes. Although it is definitely still possible, you could just shoot your way through all 4 of the birthers and get rid of them, but you need to be a lot more skilled at the game, which is why I don't really recommend it to the average player. But you're just going to want to make your way through this area. You do not need to keep an eye out for the terminal, as none of the terminals in here will have a reactor code on them, but you do want to figure out where all 4 of the birthers are. That way, not only do you know their exact location, but so you can relay it to your teammates, so if you end up dying later on and your rotator needs to come up and revive you, they know which parts of the room they should be going through and which parts they should avoid. But once you know where the birthers are, you can then make your way to the far north end where you find a security door to zone 514. Inside zone 514, there will be regular strikers and shooters, as well as a fair amount of giant strikers, and this zone only consists of 2 rooms. And if you happen to go guns loud near the entrance of the zone, you will more than likely wake up the birthers. So what I recommend you do is you sort of just sneak your way to the western corner of this zone and just go down below that ramp into the second room, open up the door, get inside, and then shut behind you, and then figure out exactly what is in the second room and where they're positioned at, and then get yourself into a good position and just simply go guns crazy, or if you can, melee a fair amount of stuff and then just blast your way through the giants. Once everything in the second room is dead, you can then open up that door and just shoot near the entrance to it, and then just fall back a little bit and let the enemies in the first room come to you. Doing this will ensure that everything in the first room will wake up, but none of the birthers are going to wake up, so you can just hold out in the second room and kill anything that comes for you, but you are going to want to warn your teammates and let them know that because you just woke up a room, some of the enemies might be going for them instead. The rotator person with this information can then watch from behind them and kill anything that does approach from that direction and keep the defender safe. Once everything in the first and the second room are dead though, you can look around, grab resources, and resupply if need be, and also you can look for the terminals. As you can see with this map, the first terminal will be in that second room, pretty much right in front of you as you enter into it, so you can check to see if that has your next code on it. If not, it's going to be the other terminal in the first room, which is down below in the infectious fog. So if you did not happen to find a stack of fog repellers earlier in the level, you're going to want to bring the fog turbine with you so you can more safely traverse through that infection without gaining a ton of, infection. But once you know what the code is, you can relay it to your teammates and they can put it in, which will move them onto the fourth wave. So at this point, they will start getting shadow strikers in the wave. And then you can make your way to the northern end of all that infectious fog, where you'll find a security door to zone 515. This door is going to be a blood door, so you're going to want to place a mine or two on it, and then make a trail of mines behind you. Because I found that trying to defend next to that blood door will more often than not get you killed. So what I like to do is place a bunch of mines down so I am able to just simply open up the door once unlocked and then quickly make my way back through the infectious fog, either by the use of fog repellers or by carrying the fog turbine, and get to the other side, drop the fog turbine, and then run back into that second room where I was defending earlier. Then if anything does happen to survive all those mines and makes it past them, they will either come for you in your room, in which case you could just simply shoot them there, or they're going to go for your teammates, in which case, again, you just warn them and say, hey, I pulled the blood door, there might be a few enemies coming at you from behind, and again, the rotator can keep the defender safe. Once you're positive either everything has come to you and is dead or is long gone and there's no risk of them screaming in the birther room, you can then leave your defense spot and make your way through the infectious fog again and then go into zone 515. In there, you can expect to see strikers, shooters, regular shadow strikers, and a few giant strikers, so be cautious when you go through here. If you brought PDW with you like I recommended, that will be helping out you tremendously when it comes to figuring out where the shadows are, but you're just going to want to clear out everything that might still be alive in the first room, and then make your way to the western side of it and go through that door. Because as you can see with this map, there are two terminals in this zone, both of them in the second room. One of them is along the western side, so you can just hug that wall and hop on that, and if that is not the terminal you need with your code, you can then make your way over to the other terminal and get it from there. Once you know what this code is, you can relay it to your teammates, but do not put it in quite yet. You can actually go and get the fifth code without even putting the fourth one in, so you might as well figure out what the fourth and fifth code is before you put either of them in, so you make things a little bit easier for the defenders. But before you leave the zone, first of all, grab any resource packs are nearby to resupply if you need them, and also use one of the terminals to ping where your power cell is, as that power cell you need in order to get into zone 517 will be somewhere inside the zone, and your next terminal code will be located inside of zone 517 itself. So go through here, get the code, get resources, get the power cell, and then you could just simply make your way back to the infectious fog. On the way back though, I would recommend try to grab a high use resource pack, either a tool refill or ammo pack, so you can give those to the defenders, as you still have plenty of resources back here you can use for later on. Once you get back into the reactor room though, plug that power cell into the generator, which will unlock the security door to 517, and then you can head down there with your fog turbine. Now, when you go down there, you can handle the zone one of two ways, because the entirety of the zone is covered in infectious fog, and the zone is just simply one big room that will be filled with nothing but chargers and giant chargers. Thankfully though, both of the terminals are fairly close to the entrance along the northern end of the room, like you can see with this map. So a thing you could do is before you initiate the reactor, have the biotracker person come near this side of the room and see if there's anything near the entrance, because if so, you might want to simply pull the room because it might be too difficult to try to sneak your way through. If there's nothing near the entrance though, you could just simply go in, hug the right side of the wall until you get to the first terminal, check to see if that's the one, and if not, just go a little bit further to the second one, and then get the code and type it in chat and relay it to your teammates. If you do happen to pull this zone, I would highly recommend that don't do it until the rotator can come over and assist you, as trying to hold out against this entire zone as one person is fairly difficult, and maybe even bring over one of the sentries. Having two people and one sentry defending against this will make it a whole lot easier, and it will lower the chance of you guys dying and then your defenders getting screwed over as they're about to get pincer formation. Once you make your way through here though, and you get that code, you're going to make your way back out. You could drop the fog turbine into the reactor room itself, as you won't need it from this point on. And then you're going to start making your way back up to the north into zone 514. When you get in there, you're going to be making your way into the second room and going to the western side, where you'll find a security door to zone 516. Now, when you get over here at this point, your teammates are going to want to put the 4th and the 5th code in, because that security door will not unlock until the 5th code itself has been put into the reactor terminal and your teammates are on the 6th wave. And because they're on the 6th wave, you want to move quickly, as they are now going to have to start dealing with those hybrids. When it comes to zone 516 itself though, it's pretty situational. The only type of enemies in the zone are going to be strikers, shooters, giant strikers, shadows, shadow giants, and 2 shadow scouts. So really, you can either try to sneak your way through, depending on exactly where all the enemies are positioned, or you could go guns loud. If you saved up a fair amount of to refill and you have plenty of mines on hand, you could place down a bunch of defense mines and just simply try to blast your way through some of the enemies and then fall back and let your mines put in a fair amount of good work. Once you dealt with everything in the first room though, you can make your way into the second room, and as you can see with this map overlay, this first terminal will be in the second room at the southern end of it, and the other terminal will be in the third room up above in the northern portion. So make your way through, and once you get on the terminal you need, relay that code to your teammates, and as soon as they're able to, they can put that in, and that will shut off the reactor sequence, and they don't have to worry about any more enemies spawning in. As for you, all that's really left is to just sneak your way through the zone and look for your second bulkhead key, as it will always be somewhere in here, but there'll be no other resources. So once you get the bulkhead key, you can leave this zone, and then you and your teammates can regroup and spend some time to grab all the resources in any of these zones you got through and resupply as best as you can. Use up the 2-use and 3-use packs first, as you want to make sure that you can carry some 4- and 5-use packs with you later on. And once everybody's resupplied as much as you can, you're then going to grab any seafoam products you left behind, especially those trip mines if there were any, and then you're going to make your way all the way back into zone 457, where your bulkhead door control is to your main objective, and then make your way over to the security door to zone 460 and continue on with the rest of your main objective. Alrighty, so continuing on with the rest of the main objective. We just unlocked the security door to zone 460, which is just a simple open door, no scan or anything tied to it. And all that's left to do is make our way to zone 464, where our extraction scan is waiting for us. However, there is plenty of stuff along the way that can very easily bring our run to an end, so we are going to want to take things slow and steady. When it comes to zone 460, the entirety of the zone, or at least a large portion of it, is going to be covered in infectious fog. And the only type of enemies you can expect to see would be shadows, shadow giants, and 4 shadow scouts. And like I mentioned earlier, any of these scouts you wake up will spawn in shadow type enemies. When it comes to the zone, there are a few different ways you can go about it. I will just simply sneak my way through the northern rooms. I try to find the best route to take by using the biotracker, as some rooms will have a lot of enemies and other rooms might not have a whole lot of them in there. And there will be resources along the way. If I come across them, I'll grab them. If not, I don't really go out of my way to try to find them, as I find that most of the time after secondary, I have more than enough resources to get all the way to the end of the level. If you do a main objective only run, that might not quite be the case depending on how efficiently you played, so maybe you will want to keep an eye out for all those resources. But you're just going to be making your way through bit by bit, room by room, heading straight up to the northern end, and eventually you'll find yourself in a room that has the security door to zone 461 in it. This security door is going to be a class 3 stealth scan, so you will have to do scans in the room. So if you have enemies in that room, you can either leave them be and try to sneak past them, or you can just simply kill them. But once you unlock that security door, you can head into zone 461. That zone is basically the same thing as 460. It's infectious fog filled. There will be shadows, shadow giants, and only 1 shadow scout usually, I believe. And there's also going to be a color keycard, which you need in order to unlock the security door to zone 462. Again, you're just sort of heading in the northern direction, although there are a fair amount of side routes that will take you to dead ends. So when you go up to a door, I would recommend read the text in the top left corner of it and see if it tells you that it gives you passage to zone 462 and onwards. If so, you're heading in the general right direction. But as you make your way through, eventually you will find the room with the security door to 462 in it. If you have the key card, you can unlock it. If not, you're going to have to look around a bit. But once you do put the key card in, you can activate the door, and another class 3 stealth scan is going to initiate. Finish every single one of the scans, and then you can open the door and head into there. When it comes to zone 462, it's going to change things up a little bit. Most of the zone is covered by infectious fog, but the second half of it is fairly free, and the only type of enemies you can expect to see would be regular strikers and shooters, some giant strikers, as well as usually 2 shadow scouts. And this zone you are going to want to clear out for the most part, as there is an alarm door coming up ahead, so we can't just simply sneak our way through and not deal with anything. So deal with the rooms bit by bit, looking out for the resources, as you can easily grab every single one of them in here. and once you cleared your way all the way to the far end of it, you'll be able to find the security door to zone 463. This security door is going to have a class 6 sustain alarm tied to it, and as you can see with the map overlay, there are no doors we can utilize whatsoever, as there are 2 open room dividers between the enemies and us. Thankfully though, we should have plenty of ammunition in our sentries, so all we really need to do is just place both of them down somewhere near that open room divider, and then just activate the alarm and get to work on it. These scans can stay up above out to the fog, but they can also just as easily go down below into the infectious fog, so make sure you are carrying that fog turbine when it does go down there. And of course, biotracker person, tag enemies as often as you can, so if anything makes it past the sentries, you are aware of it and you do not get blindsided by them. Once you finish every single one of the scans though, you are going to want to make sure you clear every single one of the enemies before opening up that door, and then resupply everybody as much as you can. Because inside zone 463, there's going to be a tank and a queen birther who will automatically wake up shortly after that door fully opens up. And there are a few different ways you can handle this. If you have a seafoam trip mine, I find the easiest thing to do is just simply rush in as soon as that door starts opening up and place that trip mine underneath the queen birther to fully encase her in seafoam, and then shoot her and kill her before she breaks out. Then you can very easily deal with the tank afterwards, as this room has plenty of cover and a lot of different angles. If you do not have a seafoam trip mine though, but you have 2, 3, or even 4 seafoam grenades, you could do the same thing. You're just going to want all 3 seafoam grenade at the queen birth at the same time to encase her, and then kill her just like you would with a trip mine. If you don't have grenades or trip mines though, but you have a lot of explosive mines, you could try to do the old classic insta-kill trick with the tank, by just placing a lot of the mines on the left and the right side of the security door, and then fall back a bit so once the tank rushes through, he will instantly die to those mines, and then you could just simply rush the queen birther and deal with her babies and herself, sort of like you typically would. Once both of them are dead though, you're then going to want to place mines all throughout this room, because at the eastern side of it, you'll find the security door to zone 464, which is going to have an error alarm tied to it. This error alarm will spawn in waves of giant chargers for the rest of the level. Now, your extraction scan is on the other side, and there are no enemies sleeping inside that zone, but it takes a fairly lengthy amount of time to finish that extraction scan, so you will have to deal with a few waves of giant chargers. So yeah, like I said, place down some explosive mines, even some seafoam trip mines or grenades if you have any left over, and then once you're good to go, activate the door, do the scan, open it up, and then run into the room, place your sentries behind you, and get ready to hold out for a little bit. And assuming you can survive and get that scan all the way up to 100%, you are done and you have finally completed alternate R4E1. And that's all there is to it. Alternate R4E1, the only E-tier mission to date that has an optional objective in it. Definitely a challenging level from start to finish. And while the level itself hasn't changed all that much when it comes to overall difficulty, it does feel a little bit easier than the original due to how much our arsenal has changed since those days. Thermal weapons have made my life as a reactor code collector far less terrifying. Although it's still fairly stressful back there, seeing how I'm all by myself and one tiny slip up could potentially bring the run to an end. Now, at the time of recording this guide, I have yet to complete all of Alternate Rundown 5 with my group, so I don't know if this level will still be the most difficult of them all in my eyes, or if Alternate R5E1 will take that position. But seeing how I've heard that the self-skip methods still exist in the alternate version of R5E1, I have a feeling that alternate R4E1 will still wear the crown of difficulty upon its head. As always though, thank you for watching this video all the way to the very end. I do hope that it was able to provide you with some assistance in beating this level. If you have any tips or tricks for this level that you want to share, any questions for me, or you just have something in general that you would like to say, please do let me know down in the comments. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me, and if you want to join my lovely community, there's a link to my Discord down in the description, as well as some other links you might be interested in. Among those links being one to the official GTFO merch store, which, as always, I highly recommend you check out if you're a fellow GTFO enthusiast. Until next time, congratulations to all of you who have fully completed Alternate Rundown 4, and good luck to those of you who are still fighting tooth and nail to get those last few completions. I've got some special videos I plan on getting done before I start working on Alternate Rundown 5 content, so keep an eye out for those, as those will be releasing in the upcoming days, and hopefully, I'll see all you wonderful people in the next video.